Hello and welcome to the Strategic Bookkeeper Podcast. Before I jump into today's episode, I might just set the scene by just sharing a little of where I am and what I'm doing to connect to where you are and what you're doing. So you may know I'm on the Gold Coast of Australia. As I record this episode, it is May 2025. You'll no doubt get it a little later as I try and batch record. So it's a Sunday morning at 7:45 a.m. and it just feels like it has been raining here on the Gold Coast for a very long time. About a month ago, someone told me we'd had 2 meters of rain. So yeah, very rainy. We had a cyclone not long ago. So I'm sitting here on a Sunday morning. It's nice and quiet. I've got my son in bed and my partner's son in bed as well. And my partner, he's a bit of a night owl. He went out dancing last night. I stayed home because I feel like I've been battling a little laryngitis since about November last year. My role at the Strategic Bookkeeper means that I do talk a fair bit, right? I am one of the lead coaches at the Strategic Bookkeeper. And of course, I'm podcasting regularly and so on. So a little bit about where I am and what I'm up to. So wherever you are and whatever you're up to, I'd love to take that moment just to connect with you. I absolutely love connection and real personal human to human connection. And I'd love to hear from you anytime. Please feel free to drop me an email. Email's always great. So hello at the Strategic Bookkeeper. I once got an email from a bookkeeper here in Australia, and she's now in my program. She's fabulous. She even came to our impromptu tribe live that we ran last year in November when my laryngitis started at my home. So we had just anyone that could kind of get organized and fly in, flew into my home here on the Gold Coast in November. And we had a few days of hanging out and a beautiful catered dinner at my home and so on. So she emailed me before she joined my program. She emailed me so much. And I ended up creating 5 podcast episodes, which I think are 5 of my best podcasts, just because she emailed me and asked me tons and tons of questions. So please feel free to connect with me on email. All right, today's episode, what's really holding you back? The invisible roadblocks to practice growth. Whether you're a startup, whether you're in practice, this episode's going to be great for you. And rather than tell you any more, let's jump into the episode. I'm Jeannie Savage, the Strategic Bookkeeper. I've been in practice for 14 years, but more importantly, 5 years in, I achieved a lifestyle practice. This means I scaled my business, could take my hands off the wheel, and draw a nice 6-figure income while being time rich. And that's what I call my dream on my terms. I was recently awarded Women in Finance Innovator of the Year, recognizing my book, my podcast, my program, and my impact globally. The Strategic Bookkeeper is my life's work, and the opportunity to help bookkeepers globally achieve the income and lifestyle that sets them free absolutely fills my cup. Please do connect with me on socials at the Strategic Bookkeepers Way private Facebook group, or shoot me an email, hello@thestrategicbookkeeper.global. Okay, my friend. So let's go over the 5 of them so we can get across them, and then we'll go back. So number 1, misconceptions and misinformation. Number 2, no real planning, especially around pricing. Number 3, broken delivery equals broken trust. Number 4, the business is not your boss, but it should be. And number 5, people-pleasing practice management. Now, unfortunately, there are a lot of things that we can get wrong right at the beginning when we're just in that startup mode, a dream in our heart, really excited. There is a lot of things that we can get wrong. There's a lot of things that we can be thinking wrong, right? So this is where we're starting on misconceptions and misinformation. And then once we get into practice, there is a lot of moving parts. Those moving parts on the whole are represented on that 1-page bookkeeping practice blueprint that I drop into the show notes every week, okay? And that is also the inspiration for the book that I published recently, the Bookkeeping Practice Blueprint. So there's a lot of moving parts that you can get wrong, a lot like a car. And you may have heard me talk about our bookkeeping practice as a car. As a startup, you're either going to build a Ferrari, right? A perfect beautiful Ferrari that you put on the road and off you go. And startups that come into my signature program, look, 100% of my startups do that because in many ways that's easy because you're given the blueprint and then you build according to the blueprint and off you go. The challenge for startups is always putting in the work to bring on the clients. But apart from that, 100% of startups, like I'm actually thinking about it right now, they come in, they do what they need to do, and off they go. For bookkeepers in practice, you'll often hear me talk about ending up with this broken down car, but it's speeding down the highway and we need to fix it, okay? And just like a car, there is many moving parts, all right? So let's jump into misconceptions and misinformation. But I do want to say this is not an exhaustive list, but ChatGPT and I, we thought about this together before structuring this podcast episode. Now that I've got ChatGPT, it does give me the opportunity to structure my episodes more than I used to. And I do think that gives me the opportunity to deliver even more value. So ChatGPT and I, based on what I was thinking, thought that these 5 are a great way to frame up a bit of a 5-point framework. So that's what I want you to think of this as, okay? So number 1, misconceptions and misinformation. What I was thinking about with this one is way back 15 years ago when I started my bookkeeping practice, which I still have now, I thought, what was one of the main things that I did wrong? And one of the main things was that I didn't know so many things. So I was thinking a certain way, and on the whole, I was thinking the wrong way. And honestly, that happens to almost 100% of us as bookkeepers starting out. We are thinking a certain way, so we move forward with the wrong thinking, which is known as misconceptions and misinformation, right? We've got misconceptions and misinformation, and we act on that. Now, when you are thinking the wrong way, then you naturally act the wrong way. And in my first book, The Strategic Bookkeeper, in chapter 1, you will find exactly this phrase, thinking the wrong way. Now, in this episode, I want to give you the headliners more than the detail, but for a little detail on this one, if you're a bookkeeper in practice with either a busy but broken practice, so low profit and working too many hours, or you're a bookkeeper in practice and you are struggling to build a pipeline of clients. These are 2 of the main problems. There are lots of other little problems. But what I want you to think in terms of the detail, the way that you should be thinking at the start, I want you to reflect on it if this is what you were thinking, which is actually going to lead me into number 2. Okay, so number 2 is no real planning, especially around pricing. So linking that to that misconceptions and misinformation, right at the beginning, what we should have understood and what we don't generally know is the kind of planning that we need to do, right? So right at the beginning, I thought planning was kind of more around like business plans for banks. But just like I tell you in episode 74 of this podcast, the planning that we don't realize we need to do is more around how much revenue do you want to make tracking annually within the first 6 months, okay? We also don't know that we should be focusing on monthly recurring revenue, so products and pricing. So how much revenue do you want to make? How many hours do you want to work? And what is your robust products and pricing strategy going to look like in order to be able to build a practice that gives you a specific revenue, a specific profitability, a specific time off, okay? So the opposite of that is going to market as a bookkeeper in practice, bringing on new clients, thinking, okay, I'm charging more than I was when I was an employee. If I just ask people, what do you want? Package that up with what seems like a high fee, and keep doing that on repeat, that's all going to work. And eventually I'll even just ask someone to help me with the work, AKA employ staff. And then if I just keep doing that, it's all going to work out, right? That's the opposite of what I just talked about there. There's a snowball effect from that, which is one of the key reasons that bookkeepers build what we call busy but broken. Lots of clients, employing staff, revenue going up, but profitability very low and working lots of hours, and actually clients not particularly happy as well, which leads to number 3. So all of these are very linked. And because I'm not going deep into the detail, I'll take a moment to let you know that if you go to my website, the strategicbookkeeper.global, there's actually a free training that you can get. It's a 2-part training on the bookkeeping practice blueprint, which is a good way to go deeper on a lot of things as well. And you can always email me and request specific podcasts as well. Oh, and just going back to number 2 and number 1, there's a lot more misconceptions and misinformation. There is no real planning, especially pricing. But as I said, go grab that training and that will help. All right. So number 3 links beautifully from these ones, which is broken delivery, broken trust. And I talk about trust and promises kept, which is on the blueprint. It's on the right-hand side, right down the bottom, next to standard operating procedures. Okay. So we talked about misconceptions. We talked about no real planning, especially around pricing. We talked about the snowball effect, which leads bookkeepers to end up busy but low profit and working too many hours. And it happens over time, right? It leads to this broken trust, broken delivery. So let me explain a little about this. This is where you overpromise and underdeliver, okay? Now, when I say that, you probably think of it as something more obvious, all right? But I'm going to talk about the 1% effect, all right? And how incredibly important trust is. So when you are bringing on clients, when you're working with clients, when you are in this transactional mode, okay, because your business, in effect, it's transactional. All the time, you are exchanging money for an outcome, not time. I've talked about that before. You are never exchanging money for time. That's just silly. That doesn't happen. Otherwise, a 5-year-old could do your job, right? It's not time. You're exchanging money for an outcome. So it's transactional. And you'll hear everybody all around the world in the brand marketing and selling space talk about at some point trust, how important trust is. One of the foundations of acquiring clients and keeping clients is the know, like, trust. You'll hear this, okay? And think of yourself as a consumer as well. Now, here's the thing about trust. It is hard to earn your prospective client or your client's trust. It is one of the hardest things. It is one of the most important things. And yet when we fracture it, even a tiny crack, this is what I call the 1% under delivery, it is very hard to repair and oftentimes impossible to repair. So when you bring on a client and you do your service level agreement, also known as your client engagement, that's your promise, right? This is what I promise to do. And what we always need to be doing is under promising and over delivering. We always need to over deliver by 1% or more. I go into this in both my books and in the free training that you can access. Most bookkeepers think that it's totally acceptable to drop the ball and that what their clients want is just the bookkeeping done, and that if they're not on point with everything, nobody's really going to mind. And that when they talk to clients about it, like let's say you say, look, I'm going to be late with this, or let's say you don't send those end of month reports that you said you would send, or you don't get back to someone in the time frame you said you would get back to them, or you say, I'm going to send your proposal by close of business today and you don't send it till tomorrow. Most bookkeepers think when they talk to a client about it and the client says, no, don't worry, it's fine, that it's fine. But I can tell you that they will tell you it's fine, but in the background, they are disappointed, they feel let down, they feel there's a break in the trust, and they are happy to go elsewhere when the right opportunity comes up. And they're probably staying with you for convenience rather than relationship, okay? If you are holding on to a client for convenience and price rather than relationship, you've got a broken business model that is at high risk. And I see this all the time. So just think about what you can learn from that number 3 of this 5-point framework on broken delivery, because we're talking about what's holding you back, okay, and these invisible roadblocks. And just one more little note on that one before we move on. In my program, I do get bookkeepers say to me regularly that they realize once we're working together that that's at play. And oftentimes bookkeepers will say they realize that it's happening, but it's not massive, right? They realize, oh my goodness, I'm either at risk of breaking promises or I'm dropping the ball a little right now. It is great that they have that awareness. You'll hear me talk about the 3 A's to change. It's awareness, acceptance, and action. So once we become aware, do you know what? The truth is I'm not delivering perfectly, because that's what you need to do. You need to 100% of the time be 1% or more over delivering. That's why I've got clients that have been with me the life of my practice, 15 years. We aim for the forever client retention, right? So that's what you need to do. And if you're not doing that, you need to go fix it. So I'm thinking about Claire Beckett, who we had on our podcast ages ago, and you can look that episode up. It was on standard operating procedures. And she said exactly that. Jeannie, when I started working with you, I realized, you know what, the truth is we're 1% or more breaking promises, not massively. She had a great practice. So she just went to ground and focused on exactly what she needed to do to make sure that the trust factor was 100% and that she was always over delivering by 1% or more. Okay. So the next one on the list, number 4, is the business is not your boss, but it should be. At this point, I'll let you know that I have made all these mistakes in my bookkeeping practice, because when I started out, there was the strategic bookkeeper. There was no one to give me everything that I needed and wanted. And so I didn't get to build a Ferrari. There was stuff around and there was some value in it. But one of the big reasons I built the strategic bookkeeper the way I built it, because I wanted to make sure that I could give everyone the opportunity to guarantee success, but do it fast. Okay. It's why I actually decided to make it more of a done for you. So my signature program with the assets is really the component that makes it done for you, rather than get you to build out all the stuff. I just give it to you, and within 2 weeks, you hit the ground running with it all there, implemented and working for you, right? But I digress. The business is not your boss, but it should be. And the moral of that story is just that I want you to know that I've made all these mistakes. Okay. So if you're sitting here feeling like, oh my goodness, my practice is broken, I feel like it's hopeless. Well, I've made all the mistakes and I got through it and I fixed everything. And so do the bookkeepers inside my program. Some it takes a short time. Some it takes really, really long, okay? But it doesn't matter. Comparison is the thief of joy. It's really about having the attitude, the gratitude, and the patience to just work diligently, one foot in front of the other, one step at a time, to go from, where you are now to where you want to be, or what I say, 0 to hero, or struggling to thriving. Okay. So just want to take a moment to say that. All right. So the business is not your boss, but it should be. What I mean by this leads me to number 5. So let's do those together. So number 5 is people pleasing practice management, also nice guy management. When you don't treat the business as your boss, and to some extent, when you treat the business as your boss, it's the financials, right? The financials will drive the business if you let them. And if you really move yourself into a place of committing to being a real leader and a real manager, and allowing the business to make the decisions rather than you, your emotions, your people pleasing, your bias, and everything else. Okay. Now, let me try and give you some examples here, combining those two, because they're very much linked and just from my own experience. So when I worked for other people, I could be a really tough manager, okay? And yet when I worked for myself, that was really, really hard. Like, I was not the same manager in my own business that I was when working for other people. And for the longest time, I did not understand that. Then finally, I realized that when working for someone else, when I had a boss, even if the boss was only one step above me, it meant that I guess I was always deferring to someone else in effect. Okay. So don't get me wrong, even working for a boss, I would never do something that I found to be, I guess, completely conflicting my values, etc. But what I mean is, let's say the boss said, okay, that staff member is turning up late all the time in their first 3 months of work and they're making excuses and they're doing this and that. You need to give them their first warning, right? That would seem fair to me, very fair to that staff member and fair to the team. And so I would do that. So I was much tougher in my management style when I had a boss, because I felt like I know that I need to get a certain result. And to do that, I need to manage everyone and so on and so on. When I went and worked for myself and I first employed staff and I had the same kind of problems that any business had, I simply didn't tackle them head on like I did when I worked for someone else. Really, that meant I definitely did not make the business my boss, because if I did, for example, I remember I had someone working for me and she was a real chatterbox way back when I had people working in the office, and she would talk and talk and talk. And rather than say, you need to stop talking because you're disrupting me, you're disrupting your own work, you're pushing our efficiency down to the ground, pushing our costs way up, and this is not sustainable, and this is a really bad habit. You need to break it immediately. I want you to be silent and get on with your work, okay? Instead of saying that, I just kind of put up with it, right? And what happened? Well, it impacted the profitability. It impacted my productivity and so on and so on. Okay, so that's just one example. And over the years, I put up with the excuses from staff because I managed without treating the business as if it was my manager. And then one day, I learned that to manage is to plan, organize, staff, direct, and control. And I also really started to notice that success leaves clues, and that successful entrepreneurs turn up and unapologetically manage their team and they manage their business. And so I decided to step up and do that, okay? And in effect, that was making the business my boss. And also, I spoke to someone not so long ago that said for him, when he decided to make the business his boss rather than make decisions that felt comfortable for him, everything changed for his business. Primarily this number 4 and number 5. So the business is not your boss, but it should be. And number 5, people-pleasing practice management. This happens around staff. Okay. In my first book around systems and team, I talk about this a lot. You need to lead with a clear vision and a clear purpose. Okay. I always lead my businesses from my heart, absolutely from my heart, my ethics, my values. And I also have a clear vision. That's a North Star for why I'm doing things at my bookkeeping practice and why I'm doing things in the Strategic Bookkeeper. I lead with that vision and purpose. But then I also am not afraid to turn up as a real manager to plan, organize, staff, direct, and control. And you don't make friends when you're managing. And when my financials, when my profit and loss and so on tell me something, I act on that. Okay, I make the business the boss. So that means cutting expenditure when I need to, even when it's hard. So if I need to let go of a staff member that I absolutely love, but it's because the business is telling me, hey, you can't afford this, you need to change your strategy, you need to change direction, you need to recruit a more affordable staff member, I take that action because my business is telling me to. I don't want to do it, right? But that doesn't matter, okay? It's not fair to the business for me to do something that will kill it, all right? And that's what this is about. If you don't let your business make good decisions and you follow through on them as the manager that works for the business, good decisions around the financials, your business will suffer in terms of profit and cash, and they are oxygen for your business. So your business will suffocate and get very, very sick if you don't do what the financials dictate needs doing. That is primarily around staff and also job costing, which is staff in a bookkeeping practice, okay? You need to take action around your job costing, around your staff costs when the business tells you to. And honestly, when you learn to turn up as a real leader, real manager, and allow your business to be the boss and take action on what it tells you, oh my goodness, transformational. Everything will get easier. You'll make more money. Your clients will be happier. Your staff will actually be happier. And how do I know all this? from experience. Unfortunately, I learned that lesson about 10 years in, but better late than never. Okay, my friend, that is the 5-point framework. Let's just run through them one last time. So misconceptions and misinformation, number 1. Number 2, no real planning, especially around pricing. Number 3, broker delivery equals broken trust. Number 4, the business is not your boss, but it should be. Number 5, people pleasing practice management. So take some time to think about those, use them as a diagnostics and a to-do list, and I'll see you in the next episode. Okay, my friend, now it is time to take action. So what are you going to do with what you learned today? The way I see it, you've got 2 options. You can go it alone to try and save some money, or you can back yourself and go for it and join my tribe. And let me tell you, we are knocking it out of the ballpark. That's not a sales pitch. That is me serving you, dare I say, courageously. To find success, I 100% know you need the mechanics, which is like the keys to the kingdom, but you also need to get your mindset right and be super productive. And these are all things I help you with inside the program. I could go on about this forever because I really want this for you. Have a prosperous week, and I'll see you in the next episode.